Miami Hurricanes are about to field their most competitive roster of the Mario Cristobal era, but will it be enough to win the ACC?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday. We made it. I'm Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, also co-host of Locked On ACC. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. On this episode, we will talk about Miami losing a verbal commitment from one of the guys that they had locked in for the class of 2025. No longer the case with this particular player. We will talk about what's going on with Tyler Barron, the defensive end who Miami is looking to add in the transfer portal. Because, when I talk about Miami having a, quote unquote, complete roster, at least the most complete roster of the Mario Cristobal era, and it's not close, like the roster may not literally be complete yet because Miami does have a spot open under the scholarship limit of 85, and there's at least one more player the Hurricanes are going after. And folks, on that roster, obviously, and we're going to go through it, question marks that you would have big picture wise after having a very active transfer portal and having a lot of young players. You've got some class of 2023 guys when Miami had a top 7 class that are going to be entering their second year. Some of these guys are going to be relied upon to play pretty big roles this coming season. And guys like Ruben Bain and Kiko Mauigoa and Mark Fletcher, whenever he's healthy again, they already showed last year they are up to the task. And then additional contributors like Popo Aguirre and Ray Joseph, just to name a couple, are guys you really hope can kind of come of age this year. And yeah, you did just bring in 14 transfers, and that number may end up being 15 by the time Miami is done. So you've got to get players integrated. You've got to get everyone on the same page, both on and off the field, and hope that all of these players are really good chemistry fits. I can speak to the players who have already been at the facility, right? Because some of your transfers came in January and were here for spring football. Other guys like Damien Martinez and Simeon Barrow and Sam Brown and Jalen Alderman are on their way this coming summer. But definitely in experiencing some of the new players who came in January, Cam Ward specifically, the process of getting these guys kind of integrated with the team, it seems to be going really well. And Ward is someone who is taking his leadership responsibility very seriously on that offense. He knew everybody's names on the roster, including walk-ons, within 24 hours of arriving here. He's been doing a lot of off-schedule workouts and team bonding activities with his teammates. So the chemistry part there seems to be going pretty well. But yes, anytime you add a lot of new players into the mix, you are playing with some variables there. We are going to be answering questions on this episode from the Locked On Canes Insiders. You guys are awesome. And if you want to join the Locked On Canes Insiders chat, click the link in the show description below, and you could try it free for 14 days. I got a really loaded question here from Nick C. in the 561 who says, hey, without going into a deep dive and based completely on a gut reaction, we don't do gut reactions here. He says, let's assume that Tyler Barron ends up signing with Miami for this exercise. He says that Tyler Barron is the former Louisville and Tennessee defensive end he's still deciding between Miami, USC, and Ole Miss. But just for this exercise, Nick says, let's assume Miami gets him. Where does Miami's defensive end, interior defensive line, defensive backs, offensive line, tight end, quarterback, wide receiver, and running back room rank in the ACC? First overall, he says, top 5, top 10, or outside the top 10. So, okay, again, we're talking about whether Miami's roster can win an ACC championship, which guarantees you a college football playoff spot. In the new top 12, if you're a conference winner from the Power 4, you are guaranteed a bid. And then, you got at-larges after that. Can this roster win the ACC? Where do they rank? we'll start with defensive end because I think that's an area, whether Miami adds Tyler Barron or not, he would be the cherry on top of the sundae. But I would put Miami's defensive end rotation, especially with Barron, at the top of the ACC. You got some killers there. Ruben Bain, Elijah Alston, who transferred in. That's another one who came in January who's doing really well. He had an awesome spring. I think Pro Football Focus had him as the top-rated transfer edge rusher in the entire country based on their metrics. Akeem Mesidor coming back, hopefully healthy. Tyler Barron, if he comes, is a killer. This guy's got proven SEC experience. He was awesome last year at Tennessee. I'm not sleeping on Malik Bryant, who has done really well in changing positions from linebacker to becoming a pure edge rusher. So you really have on paper an embarrassment of riches when it comes to the defensive ends. In the interior, it's a little. I wouldn't necessarily put Miami at the top of the ACC in the interior. Clemson and Florida State may have the edge there. Obviously, the Simeon Barrow addition was really, really crucial to stabilize the interior of that defensive line. I think the other additions that Miami made back in January, C.J. Clark and Marley Cook, were really important. I'd probably give Miami top 5 in the conference, or maybe top 3 in the interior, just because you got to hope that the depth holds up. Now, an area that we've talked about it as a question mark are the defensive backfield. I have a lot of faith in Daryl Porter Jr. I have a lot of faith in Meesh Powell coming over from Washington, and there's a lot of talent in those safety and cornerback rooms. You are going to rely on some guys that are a little bit less experienced, younger, highly touted recruits to really step up this year. And honestly, so I don't know where I'd put the defensive backfield, but I'm not putting it at the top of the ACC on paper to answer your question. But it's one of those things where you have to kind of wonder, do we nitpick that part of the field a little bit too much? Because if Miami ends up having a really dominant front 7, you're going to take some pressure off of those guys. And I also think that Miami's defensive backs are very well coached. Lance Guidry does a lot of one-on-one. He's basically the safeties coach. And I like what Chevis Jackson has been doing so far. And he and Guidry have that working relationship going back to their time together at Marshall. So, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing which of the young defensive backs, guys like Damari Brown and Jadis Richard and Jaden Harris and Markeith Williams and, my goodness, Zaquan Patterson, who's a true freshman, but it looks like he could be ready to pop. I'd love to see how these guys step up. And I wonder if we put too much of a microscope on the defensive backs, because if Miami ends up, as I expect they can, having a really strong front 7 and a really strong pass rush, those guys can get away with a little bit more in that backfield. Offensive line, I would put Miami's O-line at or near the top. Returning 3 starters from last year was massive. Now, when you go over other parts of the offense, skill positions, and I know when I say this, some people are like, he's drinking that Kool-Aid, he's guzzling that Kool-Aid, but wide receiver, objectively, you can call Miami's wide receiver room the best in the ACC because they return more proven talent and statistics than any other team in the conference. We talked about this with Miami's now, with their top 3 receivers, at least the guys who have put up the top 3 stats. Miami is the only team in the conference that has 3 receivers who had at least 500 receiving yards last year. And they've got 3 guys who had at least 800 receiving yards last year in Xavier Restrepo, Jacoby George, and Sam Brown, who came in through the portal. So objectively, Miami, you can say, has the best wide receiver room in the conference because they've put up those numbers so far. Tight end. I don't know where to rank the tight end room because there's a lot. They look really good. They look really good. But if you're talking about basing it on proven production, Elijah Arroyo, if he stays healthy, he's going to be awesome. Riley Williams, I think, can have a breakout year. Elijah Lofton can have a breakout first year, but I remember last year thinking the tight end room would be really good. Look what happened. So these guys have to stay healthy and they have to live up to their potential. So I don't really know where to rank them right now. Running back is an interesting one because the ACC is more loaded with running backs than a lot of you realize, right? I know a lot of you would say, of course, Miami's at the top. I don't know about that. I think objectively, Amari and Hampton from North Carolina and Jaden Ott from Cal. You forget Cal's in the ACC. Those guys had better years last year than Damien Martinez did. Florida State, I don't think they have anyone as good as Damien Martinez, but they do have a really deep running back room. So I think in Miami's case, if Fletcher can get healthy pretty quickly, Damien Martinez I think he's a perfect fit at Miami with his 237-pound bulldozer frame. I think he's perfect for a Mario Cristobal offense, and he's one of the better running backs in the country. I just think the ACC's deeper at running back than some people realize. And if Mark Fletcher can get healthy quickly, and you've got that dynamic duo at the top, and then you've got CJ burning people, Chris Johnson, AJ Allen had a nice season last year. You've got a lot to work with in the running back room, and then you take a little pressure off the freshmen. Jordan Lyle and Chris Wheatley Humphrey could just kind of ease their way in. So I think Miami's running back room has a lot of potential. I'd probably put them like top 3 in the ACC, not necessarily at number 1. And okay, we got more questions. Oh, let's talk about quarterback. I do think Miami has the best quarterback in the ACC with Cam Ward. So listen, again, I don't see any reason why Miami can't be in the top 3 in the ACC and contend for an ACC championship. I think a lot of it is going to be how easily does Florida State replace Jordan Travis with DJU and replace those excellent wide receivers that they lost last year. I think their defense is going to be really good at FSU. There are some question marks on the offense. They've got to show us that. Is Cade Klubnik any good? I still don't know. It hasn't looked very good the last couple of years. They're going to be relying on Cade. Our sleeper teams like NC State, can they make a run for an ACC championship? But I don't see any reason why Miami shouldn't be in the top 3 in the conference and have an opportunity to play in the ACC championship game. My goodness, we have a lot more to talk about on this episode of Locked On Canes. We want to talk about not only the importance of talent, but the importance of leadership and chemistry, because those are going to be issues here I think are just as important when it comes to talent as in how far Miami can go this year. We will talk about why Miami had one of their class of 2025 recruits recently decommit from the class. And man, you want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We are live, so smash that like button on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Whether you're watching us on YouTube, listening to the audio version, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods, we are only getting started, my friends. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new Friday episode of Locked On Canes. Game Time is the only ticket app that I use because this has become the perfect spot for me, especially being a South Floridian. There's a lot of events down here, right? A lot of sporting events, soccer, hockey. I know the Heat were knocked out of the playoffs. Football season's coming around. A lot of concerts, a lot of comedy shows down here. Game Time is the spot to be. And for the NBA fans out there, Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. And folks, taking the guesswork out, it's not only the Game Time price guarantee where you know you're getting the best possible deals and prices, it's also the all-in pricing. They show you exactly what you're going to pay up front. They don't tack on those hidden fees at the end where it's like, oh man, I thought I was getting $15 tickets. I'm really getting $37 tickets. Exact prices up front, guys, at Game Time. The view from your seat feature, they give you a panoramic view right from the app. That is a game changer. So find out what I'm talking about and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On College, all one word, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you so much for making this Friday episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, we get this question. I found that the spring game showed we have lots of talent, he says, but many of those who impressed are gone. Can the new talent become even better? And then he says, I fear talent does not define a team. So you're right about talent not defining a team. because if it was strictly based on talent, Miami's lost a lot of games over the years against teams they were more talented than. So, yes, there's a lot more than talent that goes into this. I feel that leadership and chemistry are almost as important, if not just as important, as talent. And I do feel that certain Miami teams that had some talented players, but not a lot of upperclassmen and not a lot of vocal leaders, I think that's hurt Miami at times over the years. So you do have to find that right mix of that. But to answer the talent part of your question, you talked about, some of the players who like played well in the spring game have left the program since. I strongly believe that Miami is seeing a net positive from the transfers in versus the transfers out. I think that the team is now better despite losing some players, but gaining players. I'll give you some specific examples. Simeon Barrow, the defensive tackle from Michigan State, he should be better than the defensive tackles Miami lost. Damien Martinez, the running back, is absolutely better than the running backs that Miami lost. Sam Brown at receiver, he becomes a top 3 or 4 wide receiver here. I'm not forgetting about Isaiah Horton, and Miami has some young talent there, but Brown is a really important addition that makes Miami's offense better. It's not necessarily better everywhere, folks, because I think safety's an area that Miami might be hurt. You lost Savion Riley and haven't brought anybody in, at least not yet. Miami did bring in a cornerback in Deani Hill, but he's not a safety. It's a different spot. Miami lost a couple of edge rushers, but as we talked about, that's a part of the team that's stacked, and maybe Tyler Barron is still a possible add. By the way, on Barron, I know that we've had to play the waiting game with the defensive end transfer. He was at Louisville, never played at Louisville. He was at Tennessee Volunteers, really productive player this past season. He has been deciding between Miami, USC, and Ole Miss. Has also been in the mix. He visited Miami a couple weeks ago. Hasn't made up his mind yet. I've throughout the process, I've continued to hear pretty positive feedback as to where Miami stands for Barron. It's nothing where it's like a slam dunk, like it's happening tonight. I know some people have tried to start those rumors. They put out the fake bat signals. The only bat signal you can trust is the one that comes from Dennis Smith. Dennis Smith, he rivals Elon Musk as the most powerful man on the X app. Dennis Smith has that much power. So until you see his bat signal, it's not a real bat signal. But I think in the case of Barron, some people have talked about getting mixed feedback. I was reading Gabby Urrutia at 24/7 said that maybe it was looking a little dicey and that it's been murky, I think was the word that he used, but he thinks things have been trending positively again for Miami over the last couple days. So we'll see if that gets over the finish line. I'm not 100% sure when is like the hard deadline to enroll, like in school to play here. I know that I think the deadline to enroll in the first summer session, summer 1, I think is May 17th, a week from now. But maybe he could enroll in summer 2, or if it is May 17th, maybe you find out one way or the other within the next 7 days whether Barron is going to be a Miami Hurricane. But people still tend to think things are trending positively. I can understand from a human standpoint, I understand why Barron hasn't been in a big rush to make up his mind because the market for strong pass rushers is very thin. He's the top guy available by far, and he knows he's a take at any of those schools that he's considering. It's not like anyone's going to say, sorry, bud, you made us wait too long. We're out of the Tyler Barron sweepstakes. Like he knows he's got the leverage right now. It is a seller's market, as I say, in terms of Tyler Barron. We get a question from James who says, hey, Miami just had an offensive lineman decommit. What happened there? Yeah, this happened yesterday. 3-star offensive tackle Lamar Williams from Gadsden County High School. It's near Tallahassee. I think it's in Havana, Florida. He announced yesterday that he was reopening his recruitment. He announced that around 6:00 last night. So he's decommitted effectively from Miami. The feedback that I get here is that this seemed like more of a Miami decision to go in a different direction. Williams, we talked about this at the time when he committed to Miami. He is considered to be a raw prospect. I certainly wish him the best because he seems like a great young man. So I don't know. Miami might have their eyes set on more polished prospects on the offensive line. I know they've got a lot of irons in the fire in recruiting with top offensive linemen. And again, I don't know which of these guys they land and which they don't, because these are talking about 5- and 4-star guys. But Miami has very much been after top interior players like Solomon Thomas, who's currently committed to Florida State. He's a 5-star. SJ Alofaituli, who's a 4-star from Las Vegas. I met him at the spring game, actually. Isaac Sowles is another interior guy, I think a center. Miami's in the top 3 for offensive tackle Jalen Matthews, who's going to be announcing on June 3rd between Tennessee, Miami, and Georgia. So there are some uncertainties there, but I do think Miami's going to end up landing a very good offensive line class, because the offensive line class it's deeper this year than it was last year. Like, they went all in for the O-line in the 23 class, not as much in the 20. They did get some good players, but they didn't go as much like all in 24. I think they're going to go more all in for the class of 2025. We get I guess this is more of a statement than a question. There is a question in here that says, hey, back in the day, we had people that would call out any other players that were not practicing hard enough or not giving it 110% in every workout, every practice. They would not let them get to the point where they were not prepared and razor sharp. These were the alpha dogs who would bring them inside the U and would bring the corrections needed player to player, he says. I have a feeling that Cam Ward and X-Man, Restrepo are those guys on offense. Which offensive lineman is that guy, and which player on defense are those guys? And yeah, this ties into the first question that came in when you're talking about, more to a team than just talent. You need to have players, because when Miami was winning championships, they always had several of these guys that would hold themselves and hold their teammates accountable, right? Like, you can't have a team full of followers. Like, some followers are okay, but you need to have leaders. You need to have alphas, okay? And yeah, I mean, Cam Ward, no doubt. Restrepo, no doubt. On the offensive line, Jalen Rivers. I think Miami has more than one of those guys, but Jalen Rivers is the one who, I think is probably the most vocal leader of that bunch on the O-line. And I think Rivers is going to have a phenomenal year. And I think he's kind of the glue that holds that offensive line together in a lot of ways. Now, Miami did lose one of those guys, the center from last year. But, I think Jalen Rivers can pick up some of that slack on the defense. Kiko holds people accountable. And Wes Bissainthe, that was one of the things that stood out to me about Bissainthe in the spring. That dude does some jawing. That he is the combination of lead by example, but he also holds his teammates accountable. I think Wes Bissainthe is a special player and a special human being. And there are some, like, if you're talking about more of like the vocal leaders, I don't necessarily know if Ruben Bain falls into that vocal leader category, but he is so respected from the way he plays and the way he practices. An ultimate lead by example guy, like a little bit like I would put Cam Kinchins, who's obviously moved on. Like, I would have put him in that category where he was pretty vocal, but he's not going to bite your head off or anything, but just such a leader by example with the way he worked and the way he studied. I think Ruben Bain is that sort of leader where, I think he does talk a little bit, but he's not the most vocal guy, but he's a lead by example guy. I think, and I think Daryl Porter Jr., I think this is going to be a big year for him to lead. And I think, I'll have to, obviously, Meesh Powell is new to the program. So I haven't really, I guess, gotten the most sense of what kind of a vocal leader he is, but he's definitely a lead by example guy. So you've got to have that. And yeah, I agree with our guy, SP. Cam Ward is the voice. He says swag is back. I hope the swag is back. And yeah, Big Coop, Inez Cooper is another one. It's another one who's heading into his 3rd year. He's becoming more of a leader. This is a great question. Austin from Augusta, Georgia says, which recruit do you wish Miami could have landed over the past 2 cycles, other than Jeremiah Smith? He says. I'm glad you put that in there, because Jeremiah Smith would have been way too easy of an answer. I will answer that question when we come back. My friends, we're not done yet. You want to keep it locked right here. We are live on YouTube. If you're listening to the audio version, make sure you subscribe. Keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And if you're like me, you're keeping it locked to Monopoly Go. I like trolling my friends. on Monopoly Go, but you can also team up with your friends. There's a lot of ways you can do this. You can play with your friends for timed tournaments on Monopoly Go where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get, like unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting your friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events to help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now free on Google Play or the App Store. It's game on with Monopoly Go. Thank you so much for making this Friday episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're taking questions on this episode from the Locked On Canes insiders. If you want to join our texting community, try it free for 14 days. Click that link in the show description below. Become a Locked On Canes insider today. So Austin from Augusta asked, which recruit do you wish Miami could have landed over the past 2 cycles other than Jeremiah Smith? You know, first name that popped into my head when I read that question. So I don't want to overthink it, but I strongly believe in this answer. Do you guys remember Connor Liu, who was this class of 2023? This young man, top center in the country coming out of high school, was committed to Miami, verbally committed for several months. I think he verbally committed in the summer of 2022, I guess it was, when that cycle was going on. And then like right before National Signing Day, he flipped over to Auburn. He's killing it at Auburn, Lou. Absolutely crushing it. He's expected to be one of the best centers in the heading into his second year, expected to be one of the better centers in the country this year. And like Miami had this guy, and there were reasons why, you know, I don't fault him for that or whatever. It's like a regret because the last couple of years, you know, Miami has had to address the center position with, you know, short-term rentals, which is what Zach Carpenter, they had to, you know, go out and get this guy in the transfer portal. He's here for 1 year. You know, you might have to do the same next year. Like if you could have gotten Connor Liu over the finish line, you know, one of the more important positions, especially on a Mario Cristobal team, you know, is the center position. That was one that it's like, you know, even, you know, I know you said no Jeremiah Smith, so you took him off the board. Connor Liu was the guy that I thought about. And yeah, Salty says, didn't he go to Auburn for aeronautics? Yeah, at least like that was the official. Who knows? I mean, there may have been football incentives as well, but yeah, there was something about, I guess Auburn has like a really good aeronautics school and Miami didn't have one. Like a lot of, like, that's not a really common, you know, thing that major universities have is an aeronautics school. I guess Auburn has one, Miami didn't. And, you know, he wants to be a pilot, you know. I could offer the guy lessons or, you know, paid for his, like, maybe that might have been an impermissible benefit. I would say I live right near the Tamiami airport. I would have taken him out there for flying lessons, but yeah, I guess he wanted that aeronautics program at Auburn. So whatever the circumstances were, that's one that I look at. It would be really nice to have him right now. Get a question from Cool K73 who says, Donno, why does the world hate Miami so much? If you live in Miami, January rolls around, step outside. Yeah, that's why a lot of people around the country hate Miami. As far as the University of Miami, you know, when Miami was on top, swagger, taunting, very much in the face of convention. People hold grudges to this day, and, you know, elderly have passed on those grudges to their children and their grandchildren. Like, you know, Miami was counterculture in college football. So I think there's a lot of that still exists. But yeah, I mean, you know, if anyone here has like ever lived in, like, God forbid, like a terrible place like Michigan or Minnesota, which you never want to live in South Florida now, step outside in January, February. It's a lot of hate. The hate is real and the jealousy is real out there. Alan asks, hey, Alex, is it too late for me to enter the transfer portal to play ball this year? Yeah, I mean, unless you can get some kind of a special waiver. There was a hard deadline last week, but Alan, if you can play safety and run, let's say, a 4-3, we might be able to make an exception for you if you want to join the Miami football team. We get a question from Tampa Lou who says, hey, I'm going to the UM versus Gator game. Where are the hot spots on Friday and Saturday? Any get-togethers? Gonna eat some gator meat, he said, from Tampa Lou. So I don't know like specific like which restaurants or bars, but we're planning on doing a lot of show related stuff there. I'm going to be there at that game in Gainesville, and I'm kind of letting Brad Tejeda, who's a Miami guy, but he lives up there, so he's going to organize something. I'll be at that. We're probably going to do some like pregame stuff the night before, and I'm also going to hook up with our guy Brandon Olson from Locked On Gators. He's of course going to be there. We're going to do like a crossover show from out there, probably one before and after the game. So rest assured, there will be events, there will be get-togethers. I'm not the guy who organizes stuff. I let other people do that. So once we get closer to it, I'll have details for you. But yeah, for anyone who's going to that game August 31st, we're going to be doing some stuff out there, no question. Richard M says, hey, do we, the fans, have any access to practice when fall camp opens up? If so, what dates? Yeah, the only one that they open up to the fans, the annual Canes Fest, which is a scrimmage, and we were out there. It was at Hard Rock Stadium last year. I thought it was a really good time. They have not. I don't think they've announced the date yet for Canes Fest, but that's going to be the one time when they're going to open a practice up to the public. I don't know where they're going to do it. Like they did it at Hard Rock Stadium last year. I don't know. Maybe they do it at Cobb Stadium like they just did for the spring game. I don't know where it's going to be, but Canes Fest will be open to the fans. And other than that, the other practices are going to be closed and like limited media access only. Man, we got a lot of questions we didn't get to. I talk too much, guys. I may have to, at some point, I may have to do a Q&A episode where I like put like a little timer and like not longer than 2 minutes for any answer, because I've got like 10 questions I haven't got to. We're going to try to get to some of those in a future episode. But make sure you smash that like button and subscribe. You know, we're still on Tyler Barron's timeline. We'll see if the defensive end announces maybe in the coming days, whether he announces for Miami or for somewhere else. We're going to cover it here on Locked On Canes, and we will talk to you guys again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.